Today, we're going to unpack one of the most critical moments in European history, the conversion of the Germanic peoples to Christianity.
All right, so when you first look at this, it seems, well, pretty complicated, right? You've got the fall of Rome, new kingdoms popping up all over the place, and these really dense arguments about religion. It feels like a story about faith, for sure.
But if you dig a little deeper, you start to see what's really going on. This whole story, it's not just about faith. It's about a bunch of incredibly shrewd, calculated political moves. Decisions that would literally shape Europe for the next 1,000 years. Yeah, when you boil it all down, it's about one thing: power.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Picture this. It's the 5th century. The Western Roman Empire, this massive superpower, is basically falling apart. And into this power vacuum, you have these new groups, the Goths, the Franks, you name it, swooping in and carving out their own kingdoms. It's a time of total chaos, yeah? But for these guys, it's also a time of huge opportunity.
And for these new kings, the most important choice they had to make wasn't about who to fight next or what land to grab. No, it was something much bigger. They had to make this one monumental decision that would literally define whether they survived, whether anyone saw them as legitimate rulers, and what their legacy would be. And that choice was all about which god they were going to worship. So they basically had two main options on the table, two different brands of Christianity, if you will. First, you've got Arian Christianity. Now, the bigwigs in Rome considered it heresy. It was all about a complex disagreement over the nature of Christ, but a lot of the Germanic tribes really liked it. Why? Because it was decentralized. There was no single big boss. Then you have Catholic Christianity. This was the official, super-organized, and powerful faith of the Roman Empire itself, run by influential bishops. So which one do you pick? I mean, talk about the ultimate political test. All right, so let's look at our first case study here, the Goths. They chose a path that, honestly, seems a little strange at first glance. So that brings us to the big question, right? Why on earth would a group like the Goths, who are trying to build their own power, deliberately pick the version of Christianity that the Roman Empire, the biggest game in town, officially called heresy? Well, the whole thing actually starts back in 376. You've got this group, the Tervingi Goths, and they are on the run from the Huns. They're desperate and they want asylum inside the Roman Empire. So they strike a deal. Part of that deal, they have to convert to Christianity. And the guy guiding them, Bishop Ulfila, he leads them to Arianism. But here's the thing. The sources are pretty clear this wasn't just some random choice they made. For the Goths, this was a strategy. It was their way of getting all the benefits of being Christian without having to become Roman. And if you think about it, this move had some serious political upsides for them. Adopting Arianism meant they could hold on to their own Gothic identity. It meant they wouldn't get swallowed up by the huge top-down Roman Church. They could have a faith that was theirs, that united their people, and that kept them distinct from the Romans they now lived among. It was basically Christianity on their own terms. But not everyone played the game that way. There was this other guy, a young, super ambitious king of the Franks named Clovis. And he looked at the exact same situation, the same political chessboard, and saw a totally different way to win. And this quote right here, it perfectly captures the opportunity he spotted. It's from a letter written to him when he was just a teenager, right as he became king. A powerful bishop, Remigius, is basically telling him, hey kid, you work with us, the Catholic bishops, and your kingdom is going to do just fine. And you can bet Clovis was paying very close attention. I mean, this guy's entire career was just a masterclass in politics. He conquers the last chunk of Roman Gaul, and suddenly he's the ruler of this massive population of Roman Catholics. Now, the Gothic playbook would say, keep them separate. But Clovis, he does something completely different, something radical. He decides he's going to convert to their religion. And look, by choosing Catholicism, Clovis wasn't bowing down to Rome. No way. He was basically hijacking its power structure for his own benefit. Instantly, he gets all these powerful bishops on his side, guys who controlled land, money, and people. He unites his whole kingdom, bringing his Frankish fighters and his new Roman subjects under one banner. And just like that, he becomes the champion of Catholicism, making all his Arian rivals look like the outsiders. Okay, but this wasn't just a one-way street. It's not like these Germanic groups just took Christianity as is. They changed it. They remixed it, blending it with their own traditions and their own ideas about how power works. And this led to something really fascinating, a perfect fusion of Germanic and Christian ideas. It's called the Eigenkirche, which basically translates to a proprietary church or an owned church.
So here's the deal with that. It took the Germanic idea of private property and just applied it directly to the church. A local lord would build a church on his own land. And that church wasn't some outpost of a far-off bishop. Nope. It was his property, like a barn or a mill. He owned it, he took the income from it, and, this is the big one, he got to pick the priest. It was a complete Germanization of how the church was organized. And believe me, it caused headaches for bishops for centuries.
So you've got these two totally different strategies, right? The Arian way of staying separate, like the Goths, and the Catholic way of integrating, like Clovis and the Franks. And the long-term consequences of these two choices? Well, they were absolutely massive. They literally forged Europe. And really, the results tell the whole story. The Arian kingdoms, by trying to keep themselves separate, ended up isolated. Eventually, they either got conquered or had to convert anyway. But the Franks, that Frankish Catholic alliance created a brand new powerhouse civilization that blended Roman and Germanic culture. And that kingdom became the dominant power in Western Europe. We're talking about the foundation of what would eventually become France and Germany. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that the religious map of Europe wasn't drawn up by saints and scholars in some monastery. Not at all. It was drawn in the war rooms and throne rooms of kings making cold, hard political calculations. It was all about survival, identity, and power. And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This whole story just goes to show that the line between church and state, between what you believe and how you rule, has never been a clear one. It's always been messy, something to be negotiated, fought over, and sometimes even used as a weapon. And that complicated dance between faith and power has shaped nations for centuries in ways we're honestly still grappling with today.